Aron Ralston, trapped for 127 hours. Settle in, because this one is not about the dark, or the unknown, or something that cannot be explained. This one is about a canyon wall, a boulder, and 127 hours in the absolute silence of the Utah desert. It's about what a human being discovers about themselves when the world has been reduced to a space 6 feet wide and there is no one coming. Some people find that comforting, most do not. Part 1. The desert. The Colorado Plateau in late April sits in that precise window between the cold of the high desert winter and the lethal heat of summer. Warm in the day, cold at night, the sandstone walls of its canyons glowing amber and rust in the afternoon light. It is one of the most beautiful landscapes in North America. It is also, in its deeper recesses, one of the most indifferent. The canyons do not care who enters them. They do not keep track. They simply stand, as they have stood for 250 million years, and wait. Aron Ralston was 27 years old. He was a mechanical engineer by training, an outdoorsman by compulsion, and by April 2003 had climbed all but a handful of Colorado's 58 peaks above 14,000 feet. He was experienced, physically capable, and comfortable in terrain that most people would find quietly terrifying. He had done hard things before. He expected to do hard things again. On the morning of Saturday, April 26, 2003, he drove alone to the trailhead for Bluejohn Canyon in the remote canyon country of southeastern Utah, near Canyonlands National Park. He did not tell anyone where he was going. He left no note, no itinerary, no indication of his destination or expected return. This detail, which seems almost inconceivable in retrospect, was not unusual behavior for him at the time. He had gone alone into the wilderness many times before and come back without incident. He took water for a day, some food, a video camera, a multi-tool with a short, inexpensive knife blade. He entered the canyon at approximately 3 in the afternoon. Part 2. The boulder. Bluejohn Canyon is a slot canyon, a narrow, sinuous passage cut into sandstone over millennia by water and wind. Its walls sometimes close enough to touch on both sides simultaneously, its floor dropping in sudden ledges and pour-offs that require the hiker to climb down rather than walk. It is beautiful in the way that genuinely dangerous things sometimes are. The light falls into it in narrow strips. The silence inside it is total. Ralston had descended perhaps a mile into the canyon when he reached a boulder wedged between the walls approximately 8 feet above the floor. He had passed boulders like this before. They are common features of slot canyons, lodged by floods and gravity over centuries. He stepped onto it, began to work his way down, and the boulder moved. It was approximately 800 pounds. It shifted, dropped, and caught his right hand against the canyon wall. He did not cry out by his own account. There was no one to hear him. The boulder had pinned his right hand at the wrist against the sandstone face, and in the first moments after it happened, he understood, with the methodical clarity of an engineer, several things simultaneously. The boulder could not be moved. His hand was completely immobilized. He had water for approximately 1 day. He had told no one where he was going, and the canyon walls, rising above him on both sides, meant that no one passing at the rim, even if anyone had been passing, which was unlikely, would be able to see him below. He was, in the precise and total sense of the word, alone. Part 3. The hours. What followed across the next 5 days has been documented in Ralston's own account with a specificity that resists embellishment because the facts themselves are sufficient. He rationed his water from the first hour. He attempted, systematically and without panic, every mechanical solution available to him, using his multi-tool to chip at the sandstone around the boulder, rigging a makeshift pulley from his climbing anchor and rope, attempting to shift the boulder from multiple angles. None of it worked. The sandstone was too hard, the boulder too heavy. The physics simply did not allow for what he needed. He filmed himself, He talked to the camera in the way that people talk when they need to hear a human voice and the only one available is their own. He talked about his family, his friends, a woman he had met recently and liked. He marked time on the canyon wall in his own blood. At night, the temperature dropped toward freezing, and he pressed himself against the stone and waited for the sun to return to the strip of sky visible above him. He drank the last of his water on the third day. By the fourth day, he was drinking his own urine. By this point, his trapped hand had been without circulation long enough that the tissue below the wrist had died. He knew this. He could smell it. The hand was no longer a hand in any functional sense. It was a weight, an anchor, the thing that was going to kill him if he did not make a decision that he had been circling for 4 days without being able to bring himself to complete. He had a knife. It was small and not particularly sharp. He knew enough anatomy to know where the bones were. On the 5th day, at approximately 10 in the morning, he made the decision. Part 4. The action. There are things that the human body is capable of that the mind, under ordinary circumstances, will not permit it to consider. Ralston's account of what he did next is calm and technical in a way that is more disturbing than any dramatic retelling could manage. He applied a tourniquet. He used the knife on the soft tissue first. He discovered that the blade was not strong enough to cut through the radius and ulna bones cleanly, and so he used a different method, leveraging the bones against the boulder until they snapped. Then he continued. It took approximately 1 hour. When it was done, he dressed the wound with what he had, rigged his remaining equipment into a rappel anchor, descended the 8-foot drop below the boulder, and began to walk out of the canyon. He had been without water for more than 24 hours. He had lost, by medical estimates, 25% of his blood volume. He had amputated his own right hand, and he walked approximately 5 miles through canyon terrain before he encountered a Dutch family, a couple and their young son, who were hiking in the area and who gave him water and went for help. A rescue helicopter reached him within the hour. He was alive. His severed hand remained in the canyon beneath the boulder for several days until a recovery team returned with the equipment necessary to move it. Part 5. The canyon. The boulder is still there. It is not marked. There is no sign at the trailhead. No indication to the hikers who pass through Bluejohn Canyon each year that somewhere in its lower reaches, wedged between sandstone walls that have stood since before the first human being walked on this continent, a young man spent 5 days learning something about himself that most people spend their entire lives successfully avoiding. Aron Ralston returned to the outdoors. He continued climbing. He summited the remaining Colorado 14ers. He wrote a book. He gave interviews. He was, by every available measure, a person who had processed what happened to him and continued. Whether that processing ever reaches the floor of what those 127 hours contained is not something that can be assessed from the outside. There are experiences that leave a person functionally intact and fundamentally altered simultaneously. And what Ralston discovered in that canyon, not just about survival or pain or the body's remarkable willingness to continue, but about the specific quality of absolute solitude, the texture of a silence that contains no hope of rescue, the exact feeling of understanding that no one is coming and that the only available answer is the one you give yourself, is not something that translates cleanly into any language designed for ordinary use. The canyon held him for 127 hours, then it let him go. It has held others less willingly in the slot canyons and the pour-offs and the deep places where the light falls in narrow strips and the walls press close and the silence is the oldest sound on earth. And the question it leaves you with is not whether you could do what Ralston did. It is whether you would have the presence of mind, alone in the dark, at the bottom of a canyon with the water gone and the hours accumulating to understand clearly enough what was required of you. Sleep well, my friend.